Hey, how are y'all doing? My name is Tammy Marshall, and I'm the creator of the Unemotional Eater Protocol. And so, happy Thanksgiving Eve. I don't know that I should say that. I just had this friend say, please don't wish me happy Thanksgiving. So, sorry, I'm not really sure what my hair is going to do today. And so, I just wanted to talk about perfection. I deal with emotional eaters. Like, there's lots of people, like, look around, right? We have a 40% obesity rate in our country. And so there's lots of people who gain weight because, the freshman 15 never fell off, or they had a baby and, the baby weight or the menopause weight. But I deal with emotional eaters, folks who have chronically struggled with food, who have chronically struggled with weight, and who have a tendency to eat because they're not because they're hungry, but because they're lonely or they're sad or they're glad. Like, literally, like, you're eating your emotions, rather than just eating food for the sake of eating food, as far as, for nutrition, which is really what food's job is. And so I bump into this perfection a lot, where people have, systematically been taught that they somehow need to be perfect. And it happens, right? Especially sometimes, the hero in the family, who grows up and they're trying to get good grades and they're trying to do all this good stuff. And so sometimes that gets interpreted in their system as, I have to be perfect. And that really messes when you're an emotional eater, when you have a tendency to just, eat your emotions. Then how that kind of equates is, if I'm not doing the diet of the day perfectly, I say the diet of the day because most of us have been on way more diets than we even want to talk about. But there's this idea, if I'm not doing it perfectly, then I just throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's just like, I'm just going to eat whatever I want because I've not done it perfectly. And so it doesn't matter anymore. I've screwed up anyway. And so I might as well just eat whatever I want to. And sometimes you can get right back on, but sometimes it sends you sailing, and you may be out there for years not being able to get, to as we say, to get the horse back in the barn, to come back to some kind of balance, because we can't do it perfectly. The other thing that happens in the whole perfectly thing is, you eat perfectly, so you're like gutting out this diet, and then you look at the scales and the scales don't move, and it's like, and so you just go, well, it doesn't work, and so you just give up. And I just really want to challenge the thought, food's not like anything else as far as, making what I would call a behavior change, the way that you relate to food. All the other things, my background's in addiction, and all the other things are very black and white. Alcohol, drugs, cigarettes. I gave up Diet Coke because I had a pretty serious Diet Coke addiction. Those things are very black and white. You stop, period. The world, I don't have a need for this thing. I can live life completely without it. But that's not true with food. Like, you have to eat. And so learning how to be in balance around food, like, that's different, especially if you're an emotional eater, because most people want to address the food issue, but they never go address the emotion issue. They never address the why. And so they just try to, like, gut it out. And you can only do willpower up against emotion for so long. And there's going to come a point where you're going to, like, I'm going to say you're going to fail. It's not that you failed. It's just you return back to the thing that the thing that has always worked. And so if you don't have any other tools in your toolbox in order to process the emotion, and this is more than just going and talking about it. Like, talking about it doesn't really fix it. Like, having an actual tool set in order to make things move in your system. A lot of people don't even realize that they're falling into the perfection trap. They're not even making that connection, that that's what's hooking them up, that's what's setting them up for failure. And I use that, like, there's no fail. I say we run into these diet fail cycles But it's like there's really no fail. There's trial and error. But when you're changing the way that you relate to food, there's lots of adjustment. It looks more like the rudder of a ship where it's constantly making adjustments to get from point A to point B rather than this linear, I said it, it works, boom kind of thing. Most people just don't operate like that. There may be 3%, 1% of the population. It ain't me, and it ain't most of the people that I know. And so the first thing is like, chill out. Like, be nice to yourself. Stop beating yourself up. It's not that you don't have goals and expectation, but at the same time, like, I became way more interested in how to take the charge out of food and how to change the belief about food than I did about, being so mean to myself. And that's the thing I teach my clients. I had a conversation yesterday with one of my clients about pie. She buys a pie for herself and she buys a pie for everybody else. And, that's kind of how Diet Coke used to be in my world. Other people would leave the house if we were out of Diet Coke because it was such a priority in our household, which is kind of funny now because I've not had one in, 6 or 7 years and not wanted it. Like, it's not like it doesn't even come up in my brain, which is so bizarre. But this like coming up against like, why does that pie have so much control, and being able to break down, like, you hold the information, and so there's no shaming in what I'm about to say, but it's like everybody else is not looking at the pie like that. And so what is it that's going on in your brain that has amplified the interest in it, that has amplified this, I have to have mine? Like, what is the processes, and how do we interject into that so that the brain takes another path, so that you don't keep, because right now, like, she's running the same pattern every time. Every time it's like, I gotta have my own pie. There's a pride and an ego thing to that says, I get my own. Right. But there's also something, there's a whole lot of emotion that's in that. There's a mine, there's like a, you can't have it kind of thing. There's a arrogant ego thing with it. But there's also this attachment and this, I call it jazz hands, which kind of sounds crazy, but it's like food. Certain foods will have like jazz hands to you because it's a hyped up effect when you're around it. And that's the stuff that I take the jazz hands out of food so that you can be around it and just be okay. Like, you can take it or leave it. It just doesn't have so much power anymore. And so the way you look at it, it just shifts. It's almost like if you've ever had that boyfriend where you're like, and even after you break up and you see him, but like 10 years later, you look at him and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I ever wasted a tear on that thing. It's kind of like that with the food where you just are like, oh, yeah, okay. And it's like, you don't have that, you just don't care. Like, and there's a lot of power in that, because as long as food has that jazz hand thing, like, it's holding all the power. And I'm going to remind you, like, it's food. It doesn't have any power. Any power it has, we gave it. And so we have the power to take it back because we have the power, we created it, therefore we have the power to take it back. And it's just understanding how to access the brain so that you don't have that hyped up feeling around food. The other thing is to be able, when you see that perfection thing show up, that you know how to interject with those thoughts and that mindset, so you don't just throw everything out and just quit. Because that's usually what happens, right? If I'm not doing it perfectly, then I just quit. It's a free-for-all. I go out and look for the next diet or the next magic pill or whatever that's going to fix me. And I'm telling you, until you solve the real problem, none of those things are going to fix you. Like the other part is you're not broken. It is truly just understanding how to move the files around in your mental file cabinet so that things don't have that kind of power over you anymore. All right. Obviously, I was a little fired up this morning. So there's a link below. I'm doing a 21-day challenge that is just about dealing with emotional eating, just the craving side. So you learn how to take the jazz hands out of food. I don't really know why I said the jazz hands things, but it's kind of funny, but it's kind of true. But that it's going to be just focused on cravings and taking all that excitement out, because there's a system to it. And it's once you understand the system, like it's just, I don't know, it's just easy. I say that it's work, right? It's going to the gym, to the mental gym, but once you have the power to do it, it's just like, oh, okay, I didn't have that information and now I do. So I'll put the link below if you want to come join me on this 21-day challenge to just completely change your relationship with food and take the cravings. Be able to take your power back from cravings with food. We're in the middle of eating season. Eating season starts on Halloween and it goes through about Super Bowl. And like, you don't have to gain weight this year. You could actually get to the end and eat foods you want to eat and not feel like a slug come January and feeling like you got to do one more New Year's resolution. So like, come join me. Let's start to talk about food and how we change the relationship with food, and let's just have some fun. I'll always tell you, go be kind in the world. Holidays are tough. And, you know, some people are blessed, some folks are blessed with family. Sometimes things change and you used to have family and now you don't. You know, whether through divorce, whether through death, just whatever the circumstances are, I would just ask you to be kind. The world just needs more kindness and more grace. And it can be really simple. A kind word, a smile, open a door, take somebody's cart back. You know, the one I always have to work on is letting somebody in traffic. But just go do an act of kindness today, because it's a big, crazy world out there. The thing that we seem to suffer from now is loneliness. In the day of internet, in the day where families live all over the country, we're really suffering as a nation from loneliness. And so I would just really encourage you just to, out of an act of kindness, to connect with people, to look them in the eye, to really hear what they're saying, just to know that somebody on the planet, even in a passing, has a care. And so go be that person. I would also tell you to go be that person to you. Sometimes with emotional eaters, they have a tendency to take care of everyone but themselves. And there's actually this slow kind of hating ourselves. And so I would ask you to go be kind to you and to go say something loving to you today. Looking yourself in the mirror, looking yourself in the eye, and just saying, I love you. You know, if you've heard me talk, like that was a really loaded statement that I said to myself several years ago. But it began to unravel a whole lot of things to where, you know, I really can look in the mirror and say that now. And so that would also be my challenge to you, to be able to look yourself in the eye and say, I love you, and mean it. So go have a blessed day. Happy Thanksgiving. Blessings.